All right, so this is the best I could do with my logo, my graphic symbol for Earth Day Achievement Badge within the time we had. But once you have this, I want you to realize you can do variations very, very easily. So I'm just going to show you for an achievement badge, one of the reasons I chose that theme is I can take just one big shape. I'm going to do it on a new layer here. This will be a green layer. And I'm just going to hold down Shift while I do the ellipse tool to get a circle. And then I'm going to take my whole logo, which is all the red, and I'm going to hit Edit Copy, or Command C. Then I'm going to make a new layer, just to show you what I'm doing. I'm going to lock the old one, turn it off, click on the new layer, which is going to be blue, and say Edit Paste in Place. So that gives me a copy of it, perfect copy. Now I'm going to use my large selection tool, and I'm going to move all of this over on top of, move my circle underneath it so I can see it, and then move this where I want it within. And it'll even show me kind of when it's centered. Okay, now I'm going to minus this from this by using the minus tool. So really easy once you have those vector shapes to get variations. Does that make sense? And we want it all to be with black shapes. So this is what would be called an invert. I'm going to show you one other quick thing. What if I wanted just a little bit more pizzazz on that? So I'm going to make another circle, just a little bit smaller, right? But this time I'm going to swap it. It's not going to have a fill, it's only going to have a stroke. And the stroke is going to be white, just for the time being, just for the purposes of showing you what I'm doing. And since we're not using strokes, you want to know how to turn them on and off, with the none. But how you would manipulate them is under properties. I can make that stroke as thick as I want in point values, just like we do with text. Okay, now I'm going to use the large selection tool. Keep holding down Shift to keep it a perfect circle, but then shrink it down and center it. And now I'm going to grow it out a little bit by holding down Option and Shift. Right? And now my goal is to subtract that white stroke from that circle, from the path behind it. So to do that, this is a really good trick. Strokes don't have an inside and an outside edge, you see? It just pushes out from a certain point measurement out from the edge of your fill path. But if you want to make your stroke into a fill path, you go up to Object, Path, Outline the stroke. This will make a lot more sense when we're using it later for line art. And now it is no longer a stroke. It is a fill path with white. It has an inside and an outside edge. And then I can just use my arrow keys, get it exactly where I want. And because it's a fill path, I can now take that fill path and I can subtract it using Pathfinder minus from the circle beneath. So I'm selecting the stroke. There it is. And then selecting not all of these shapes, but just the big circle one underneath. And then subtracting it. For some reason it deselected it for me. Okay, there we go. So that gives it a little bit of pizzazz. Now I'm going to ask you, which one do you think is one that I would want to print for my portfolio? So the invert, right? And that used all the same skills as it used to make this. It's just understanding where is the negative space, where is the positive space. All right, so if I want to use this one, this is what I do. I turn off the eyeball for the positive space one, and I select the inverted one, and I have to hold down Shift so it doesn't distort to fit it onto my artboard. It has to fit onto the artboard. Then I need to save it. Now within this file, I have both types, right? It's great to have vector variations because they don't take up much memory. So I have that one and I have this one. And I like to lock them when I'm kind of finished with them. Okay, so to save this one now as something I can bring into Photoshop to make print ready, I'm going to say save as onto my computer, keep the same name, but I'm changing the format to what is called a transferable vector format. So AI is our working format, but it only ever opens in Illustrator. And Illustrator EPS is Adobe's preferred transferable vector format. So I'm going to save it that way. We're going to be doing this a lot. And then, just to be safe, because vectors are perfectly clean, I'm going to save it as the same name to my computer. I don't want it to show this again, because I'm always going to be saving to my computer. And I'm going to save it as a more universal transferable format, which is the oldest vector format. It's called SVG. Now, SVG will work in Photopea. It will work other places, right? EPS really works the best between Adobe programs. So between Photoshop and Illustrator, EPS is easiest. Okay, now I can close Illustrator. And I got to find those files. Now, what I don't like about the EPS files on the new operating systems is they don't give you a preview. So I'm going to mark that as purple. This is a vector format. I use purple for my vector formats. And then my SVG does show me a preview, but it shows me a preview of everything turned on. Does that make sense? So if I double click this, because it's a vector, it will automatically open in Illustrator. That's my vector program, right? But if I double click the EPS, this is what's dangerous. It will want me to rasterize it before I can open it. Rasterizing is a bad idea, right? But because it's a vector, it can be rasterized at any size. So instead of doing it that way, we're going to do it this way. We are going to open a new Photoshop file. So we'll go to Photoshop, we say File, New. And this is to make things print ready. We're going to do this with all the pieces we want to print for the midterm. We are going to make our size 8 inches wide, 10 inches tall, unless you want landscape format, which would be 10 inches wide, 8 inches tall. And we're going to do a resolution of 350, our studio resolution. And I'm going to name this one, my name, Karl, and then assignment 4, black logo, even though they're graphic symbols. And stump. So your name and a description. It's going to create that file. That's a white 8x10 at 350. Now I drag and drop my EPS onto it. And it will come in as a smart object, and then I place it. I want you to think of this black space around the 8x10 white as your mat. It's this. Does that make sense? Do I have an empty mat somewhere? In the back. So I don't want it to be too close to the edges, so I'm going to shrink it down holding Option until it just looks kind of comfortable. And then I hit Return. And the beauty is it's now a smart object, so it can be turned into any size, and it will render at the best possible resolution at that size. So our vector, this is basically making a custom vector shape within Photoshop that can be rescaled to any size, and it will always be as clean as possible within the raster architecture. But when you print, especially on our fine art printers, you print pixels. Right? You can't really print a vector, you can only cut a vector. And there's certain machines that do that, but it's not our fine art printers. Okay, so now I can save this. That's for my black shape print. I save it as a PSD. I'll save it to the desktop. Now how do I get it to Canvas, right? To turn it in. I'm actually going to turn off that background. So I see that checkerboard, and I'm going to save it as what kind of format so that it can be used as a raster logo on any kind of background. PNG, because that preserves transparency, just like we did with our emojis way back when. So I say save a copy, and I change the format to PNG. And that way, when you post it, even though Canvas has a white background, I can tell from the file whether you accidentally had any white shapes or gray shapes, anything other than black shapes in the vector. So now I go back to Canvas. I go to the assignment 4, and I can post my second requirement after the refined sketch. And it's just going to look like a much cleaner version of my refined sketch. But this is going to be my black shaped vector as a PNG. So requirement number 2, it's a black shaped vector saved as a PNG at what size and resolution? You guys know this? Yeah, 8 by 10 at what resolution? We're going to do 350. Yeah, 350 pixels per inch. Just so if I have to grow it a little bit for your print, if you made it a little too small or something, we won't lose quality in the print. Saved as a PNG with no background, right? 8 inches by 10 inches at 350 ppi. 300 is the standard minimum. 350 is our studio. It allows us to go a little bit bigger if needed without losing quality. So I'm going to take the PNG, which I mark orange. My PSD, I mark green. We're going to go back to that PSD for coloring for our color variation. But I'll show that next class. And this is where ideally we would be before next class. But as long as you have at least your refined sketch in, then you've acknowledged the deadline. And this isn't going to be due till next class. The thing we need to add is then the color version. Make sense? All right.